Hello, and welcome to this UCAS information presentation. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mr. Pycroft and I'm the head of sixth form here at Highfields. And today I'm just going to be sharing with you some information about the UCAS process, which is the system that students will have to go through for their applications to university. As part of the presentation, I'll start off by talking about why university is such a good option for many, but not necessarily all of our students. I'll then talk you through some of the details of actually going through the application process and what that will entail, and I'll finish the presentation today with some information in relation to student finance. Before going into the detail of university applications, I do think it's important to point out that higher education and university is just one of many options available to students when they leave sixth form. As you can see on the screen there, apprenticeships is a route that actually is becoming increasingly popular amongst students. The idea that they can work whilst they learn is something that is really quite appealing to many students. Taking a gap year, perhaps studying abroad, going travelling, or even getting a job and earning some money and improving their skills before they go off to university. These are all different options that are open to students, and actually I think the key to making sure you make the right choice, or to making sure that a student makes the right choice, is to really think carefully about what they want their future to be like, what they want to do with their future, and then making sure that they've done the right research and they know the steps that they need to take in order to get to that point. Obviously, as part of this presentation, I'll talk quite a bit more about research in relation to higher education. But at this point, if you do want any more information about the alternative options to university, then the UCAS website has a really useful page, and I've included the link on this PowerPoint slide. In terms of university study, there are many benefits, and I think this is reflected in the fact that the majority of sixth form students at Highfields do apply to university, and the majority of our students do go on to undergraduate study once they finish their A-levels or their level 3 applied qualifications. There are obviously benefits to students whilst they're studying in terms of developing new skills, acquiring new knowledge, but also that wider development in terms of themselves as individuals and learning to be more independent and meeting new people and having new experiences is something that's really, really valuable and is a key aspect of going to university. And then obviously once they leave university, they have the benefit of a degree qualification, which is something that will stand them in good stead for many, many different careers in the future. I think it is true to say that generally speaking, students who have a degree, or sort of certainly job applicants who have a degree, do have better job prospects in most fields. But it's also true to say that actually there are some fields of industry and there are some lines of work where having a degree isn't as beneficial as you might think. And so I think what that does, that highlights very much the importance of doing your research so that you know the career that you want to go into. Is that a career where you would benefit from having a degree, or is that a career where actually you might want to consider a different pathway? So in order to make sure that students are making the right choice for them, research at this point now is fundamentally important. In terms of universities, there is a really, really useful search tool on the UCAS website, and I've included a link to that search tool on this PowerPoint slide that allows students to look for any courses at any universities in the UK. That's certainly the place that I would recommend they start their research in looking at the courses that are available. And then in terms of finding out more information about any courses that they potentially like the look of, they can then go to the individual website of that particular university and of that particular course and find more details through the web page of the university themselves. It's usually at this time of year as well that we would be encouraging students to attend open days. Obviously, this year that's going to be much more difficult. Many universities now have cancelled their open days, and what they've done, they've rearranged them as virtual or online open days, which can actually still be really beneficial as they will provide lots of information about their institution. They'll provide lots of information about the courses that they offer, and in many cases they might also provide a virtual tour of their facilities, which is really useful to see. So there are ways that students can still find out about universities and courses. It's just being done in a slightly different way this year. Students can also learn lots from others, so by looking for videos and blogs online and hearing what other students have to say, that can be a really useful way to get a student perspective on what a university is really like. And again, at the bottom there, in terms of research, there is also a career finder tool on the UCAS website, which is also quite useful and should definitely be used by students as part of their research. And on this slide, I've just included a few things that students might want to keep at the forefront of their minds whilst they're doing their university research. Obviously, the course that they wish to study is of paramount importance, and that should be a key consideration. But there are also a number of other factors that students might want to take into account when making their final decision about where to study. So, for example, one thing that students perhaps either overlook or don't fully appreciate is the difference between a city and a campus university. Manchester University is a very good example of a city university. It is right in the heart of the city centre in Manchester, really quite busy, an awful lot going on. Whereas somewhere like Keele University is a campus university, which means that all of the university's facilities, all the buildings, all the activities, all take place on one site. And that site is a little bit outside of town, so it's much more self-contained and tends to be a little bit quieter. So whether you go to a city or a campus university actually has a fairly significant impact on the type of experience you will have. And that's just one example of one of these considerations that I would make sure students are thinking about when they make their decisions for university. So once a student has done their research and they've decided that university is the right option for them, they are now at the point where they can start their university application through UCAS. We have launched the UCAS process within school this week, and students have received several resources, including video recordings, quite similar to this one, and also written guides as to how they should go through the UCAS process, how they can complete the application form, and they've also received support with writing their personal statement, which I'll talk about in a moment. So, the application is entirely online. It's done through the UCAS website. Students have a maximum of 5 university choices, and that includes courses, so that's 5 courses. So even if they choose 5 different courses at the same university, that will count as their 5 choices. It's not institutions. There are some restrictions in terms of course choices. So if you want to study medicine, veterinary science, or dentistry as well, then there are a maximum of 4 choices, and students can only apply to one of Oxford or Cambridge. You cannot apply to both. There is a cost to apply to university. It's £20 if you're applying to one institution, or £26 if you're applying to 2 or more. So it doesn't make a difference whether you apply to 2, 3, 4 or 5 universities. The cost is the same at £26. So you might as well make sure you get your money's worth and apply to all 5. Students will get equal consideration if the deadlines are met, and I'll talk through the timescales and the deadlines later in this PowerPoint. And there's also the principle of invisibility, whereby individual universities will not see the other places that students have applied to. So universities will only see the application in terms of the information that they need. They won't get the rest of the information about other applications that students have made. I mentioned a moment ago something called a personal statement. This is the aspect of the application that will require the most input from the student. It is a written document they will produce that is essentially their opportunity to promote themselves to the university. They have to talk about their interest in the subject that they wish to study, their academic background, and how their studies so far have prepared them for the next steps in their academic journey. They have to talk about their enrichment activities that they've done and any extracurricular that they've been involved in, and how that has helped them to develop key value skills that universities will want students to possess. So there's an awful lot for students to fit into a personal statement. Roughly speaking, it's a side of A4 typed, but it's strictly 4,000 characters, including spaces, or 47 lines, because the UCAS application page has very clear criteria of what you can enter for your personal statement. Students will be allocated a UCAS tutor. That process will be done over the next couple of weeks and then will be shared with students. And the UCAS tutor that each student gets will help them with their personal statement. It's highly likely that students will have to do a number of different drafts of their personal statement before they reach the final draft, the personal statement that will go off with their application. So students shouldn't be too disheartened if they get feedback and they have to make changes or they have to adapt things. That's all part of the process. It's perfectly normal. And eventually, students will get to a point that they're happy with their personal statement and it can be sent off with their application. Another key component of the UCAS application process is the reference that will be sent to universities. That reference will be written by the student's UCAS tutor, so the same member of staff who supports them with their personal statement will also write their reference for them. The UCAS references are based on subject statements that are written by the teachers from the subjects that the students take. So if a student studies English, history and maths, then each department will have an opportunity to write a subject statement, and then the UCAS tutor will compile those subject statements together, add an introduction, add a summary paragraph, and that then forms the UCAS reference. Alongside the subject statements that departments will write for each student, they will also provide UCAS with a predicted grade for each subject. So it's the teachers for each of the subjects that the students have who will come up with that predicted grade, and that will be based on all of the different work that's been done with students since their time in sixth form. Both the reference and predicted grade will be shared with students and parents and carers before the application is submitted. We are actually in the process of compiling that information now, and we hope to be able to share that with you before we break up for summer, but I will write to you in due course to confirm those arrangements. In terms of actually submitting the UCAS application, it's important to highlight that applications cannot be sent until the 8th of September at the earliest. So there really is no need for students to rush or to panic over their UCAS application form because they will not be sending it before the summer. They can keep working on their applications, but they won't be sent to UCAS until September at the very earliest. Now, for students who want to apply for Oxford or Cambridge, or for medicine, dentistry, or veterinary science, or veterinary medicine, there is a 15th of October deadline for those courses. We refer to these courses or applications to Oxford and Cambridge as early entry applications, and they will receive priority in September in light of the deadline that is in October. The majority of other courses have a deadline of the 15th of January, but in all honesty, it is our aspiration for all of our UCAS applications to be sent well in advance of that date. Applications that drag on and go into January, students often start to panic because they feel pressured in terms of the looming deadline. And we just find that actually it's a much better experience for everyone involved if the applications can be sent before Christmas. It also means that the quicker the universities get the applications, the quicker they can start allocating new places on the courses. So you will find out from universities earlier whether or not you've been offered a place. The other thing to point out is that there is quite a lengthy admin process in school. It takes between a week and 2 weeks once students click the submit button on their application. Once they submit, it doesn't go straight to UCAS. The application comes through to us at school, and then we have to do some things to it. For example, proofread it, make sure there are no mistakes, and add the reference before that can be sent on to UCAS. Now, at the peak time for university application submissions, we're getting lots and lots of applications in a very short space of time. So it can take us up to 2 weeks to turn that admin process around. So if a student applies on the 14th of January, for example, it is quite unlikely that that application will actually go to UCAS by the 15th of January. So that's another reason why we like to get the application sent before Christmas if we can, because it means that there are no worries about meeting the deadline on the 15th of January. And then that final deadline on there, the 30th of June, that's the last date to submit an application before you enter the clearing process. And the clearing process is essentially where students apply and they go into the courses that are left once all of the places have been allocated. So applying through clearing is not as preferable as applying through the standard UCAS system, because it might well be that places on certain courses are full, and so therefore students can't apply for those places. Once students have submitted their application, they will be able to track its progress through the track feature on the UCAS website. And this is particularly useful for seeing if universities have responded to their applications and made them any offers. And it will also allow them to reply to their offers once they've received all the responses from their chosen universities. The decisions and replies that students will get from university, there are a number of different replies that they may get. So they may be turned down for a place on a course, their application may be unsuccessful, and it's just important to point out that obviously the student can be successful with certain applications but unsuccessful with others. They're all completely independent of one another. They might get what is known as an unconditional offer, and universities have increased the number of unconditional offers that they give out to students in recent years, although they are still in the minority. An unconditional offer just means that that student's place at that university is guaranteed regardless of their results. Or students may get offered, and this is more likely, they may get a conditional offer whereby a university will say, you can have a place on our course if you achieve this criteria. And that criteria is usually based on A-level or level 3 applied results at the end of sixth form. It's also the case that universities have started being slightly more creative with their offers. So some universities now will offer a conditional, unconditional offer, which basically means if you put us as your firm choice, then your offer is unconditional. If you don't put us as your firm choice, then your offer has conditions. So universities are getting increasingly creative with the ways in which they're trying to recruit students. What I would say is if any student does reach the point where they've got an offer from a university that they don't understand, they should contact a member of the sixth form team and we will help them. Once they've received all of their offers, they can then put one of their choices as their firm choice, and they should put one of their choices as their insurance choice, and the other three, assuming you've applied for 5 courses, will be declined. The firm choice is the university and the course that they wish to study from September 2021. Once you select a university as a firm choice, that is then seen as an agreement between yourself and the university, and the only way that you can then get out of that agreement is by contacting the university directly and asking them to release you from your place. So it's really important that when you make that firm choice, you are confident that you're making the right decision. And in terms of the insurance choice, it's always worthwhile putting the insurance choice as an offer with slightly lower entry criteria, because if your insurance choice is the same entry criteria or even higher entry criteria than your firm choice, then it becomes essentially pointless, because if you meet the entry criteria for your insurance choice, you will have also met the entry criteria for your firm choice, and so you will end up going to your firm choice. So it's really important that your insurance choice is a slightly lower set of entry criteria, with the idea being that if you don't quite meet the criteria for your firm choice, you will fall back and your insurance choice will then hopefully be available to you. There are a number of other options available to students as part of the UCAS process. For example, if they make 5 applications and those applications are all unsuccessful, then they can continue their application through the UCAS Extra process. This is essentially whereby students can make one additional selection and make an application for that course at no extra cost. So if they have 5 unsuccessful offers, they can then make a 6th application. And if that 6th application is unsuccessful, then they can make a 7th application. But you can only make one additional application at a time through the extra process. If students apply after the 30th of June deadline, or if they have no offers having gone through the standard process and the extra process, they will enter clearing. Clearing is essentially whereby all the remaining spaces that universities have on all their courses are made available to students, and then students can essentially look what is available and apply for those courses. Clearing is most commonly used on A-level results day, where students haven't been as successful as they hope they would be and they haven't met the entry criteria for either their firm or their insurance choice, they then can go through clearing at that point. And for this year, UCAS have made some improvements to their clearing system, whereby if you log into the clearing system, which will be called Clearing Plus, students will have automatically been matched with courses that UCAS think they might be interested in. So that should hopefully help that system quite a lot. There's also a system called Adjustment, which is available on A-level results day, and this is for students who've got better results than they were expecting to get. And so if you've applied for a course perhaps that has got entry criteria of CCC, and then you get AAA, you can adjust your offer and potentially look for a course with slightly higher entry criteria to reflect the improved results that you've achieved. That's everything I really need to say about the actual UCAS application itself. The other topic I would just like to cover briefly is student finance. We're well aware that the financial implications of going away to university are significant, and for many students, money plays a really important role in determining what your options are in terms of university. For example, are you going to stay at home? Are you going to move away? Do you need to apply for a maintenance loan? Are you going to try and fund the course yourself, or are you going to apply for a student loan through the government? These are all the types of questions that I'm sure students and also parents and carers are currently considering. And so hopefully the information that I provide for you here will help you to answer some of those really important questions. There are two main costs to university. The first is the tuition fees, and for the vast majority of degree courses in the UK and certainly in England, these are now £9,250 per year. So that's a substantial amount of money. For a standard 3-year undergraduate course, students will be leaving university with around £27,000 worth of debt. So when you put it in those terms, it is really important that they make the right decision about whether or not university is for them. I am going to talk a little bit later in the presentation about some of the factors that make that much more manageable, so please don't panic at this stage. I do think university is accessible for everyone, regardless of your financial circumstances, but it is really important that you go into this fully informed and you are aware of the costs of a degree. You will then also have the living costs as the second cost of going to university, and this very much depends on the choices that you make. So, as I said earlier, do you wish to stay at home and live with parents or other family members perhaps, or do you want to move into university accommodation, which is quite expensive, but will give you an opportunity to move out and be more independent? You have to consider things like food, travel costs as well. And I've just put there that quite broad term of lifestyle, because we all know that students, when they go away to university, going out, socializing, having fun with friends is another really big part of what they'll be wanting to do. And again, that costs money, and it's something they need to factor in when they're making their decisions. I mentioned a moment ago that I don't think financial barriers have to prevent any student from attending university if they wish to. And the reason for that is because we have such a strong student loan system in England. So, in terms of tuition fees, the government and Students Finance England will cover the costs of the degree for a student. So they will cover the full £9,250 per year for every year of the course. The vast majority of students in the UK take that tuition fee loan, and that is something that you actually, as a student, will never see yourself. That money goes straight from the government to the university, so it's not a payment that you have to make. When you enroll at university, you just tell them that you've got a tuition fee loan, and they will sort that out with the government. Crucially, this loan isn't means tested, which means it can be accessed by everybody. It doesn't matter your own personal circumstances. Everyone has the opportunity to apply for a student tuition fee loan if they wish to. It's also worth pointing out that if you're looking at a medical degree, you will have to pay for the first 4 years, or well, the tuition fee loan will pay for your first 4 years. You will obviously have to pay that back later. And years 5 and 6 of your medical degree are covered by the NHS, so you don't actually have to pay for the whole degree. It's just the first 4 years that you will need a tuition fee loan for, and then the NHS will pick up the final 2 years. The second type of financial support that a student can receive is the maintenance loan, which is designed to cover the living costs of attending university, such as food, potentially accommodation, socialising, and so on. The loan is paid in 3 instalments across the year, just to make sure we avoid any situations whereby students spend their entire maintenance loan in the first 2 weeks and then have no money to live on for the next few months. And the key thing about the maintenance loan in terms of how it differs from a tuition fee loan is that a maintenance loan is means tested. This means that your personal circumstances will affect how much money you can borrow. And on this slide here, I've just included an overview of the maintenance loan amounts, the maximum amounts for September 2020 entry to university. So these numbers might be ever so slightly different for students who attend university in September 2021, but broadly speaking, they will be in line with one another. And this gives you the kind of indication as to how much money a student can apply for as a loan. You will notice that students who live at home will receive less money than students who live away at university. That's just to account for the cost of accommodation. And you'll also notice that students who move away to university outside of London get one amount, and students who move away to university in London get a higher amount to reflect the increased cost of living in London. So obviously, both the tuition fee loan and the maintenance fee loan do need to be repaid to the government. But I think it's the repayment system for a student loan that makes this financial support so useful to all students. Repayments of the loan don't start until the April after they've graduated. But crucially, they don't start repaying the loan until they earn above £26,568. Regardless of how much they've borrowed, regardless of how long they were at university for, their repayments are based on the salary that they earn in their career after they leave university. So students who go to university for September 2021, their repayments will be 9% of the income they earn over £26,568. So if you earn £27,568, for example, then your repayment will be 9% of the £1,000 that you earn over that threshold. It's not 9% of your whole salary. It's not a commercial loan, so it doesn't have any impact on your credit rating. It won't affect your opportunity to apply for mortgages in the future. There are no penalties on early repayments. And, possibly the best news, any repayment that hasn't been made after 30 years is written off. So you only have to repay your student loan for 30 years. If at the end of those 30 years you haven't paid it off, your debt is cleared. I've just included this example from the Student Finance England website. It just reiterates the point that I made a moment ago about the fact that students only repay their student loan when they earn above a certain salary threshold, and that makes the payments really quite manageable. So for a student whose annual income, a graduate whose annual income is £28,800, they will pay back £16 a month, which is 9% of the £186 above the threshold that they earn for each month. Again, here this slide, just to reiterate the point that the amount of money that you borrow doesn't impact on your repayments. So it doesn't matter if you borrow £20,000 as a student loan, £50,000 or £1 billion. The amount that you repay will be the same if your salary is the same once you graduate. There are 2 other forms of financial support that students can potentially access at university. The first is a bursary, which is often based on personal circumstances, including household income. And this can include discounted tuition fees, support with accommodation costs, or just a financial payment. You've also got scholarships, which are based on academic results or specific talent. So if you're really good at a certain sport, or if you're a really good performer, that might help you get a scholarship. But scholarships are often quite limited in terms of the numbers, and they're usually quite subject specific. Now, in terms of getting access to bursaries or scholarships, usually you have to go directly through the universities themselves. So what I would suggest that you do is you contact the university that you wish to apply for and just inquire directly with them whether or not you would be eligible for any bursaries or scholarships. But there is a useful website, and I've included the link at the bottom there, thescholarship.hub.org.uk, which tries to give as much information about the scholarships that are available at UK universities as possible. Students with caring responsibilities can also access additional financial support for university. So if there are any students who have dependent children or dependent adults, they can access some of the financial support schemes listed on the screen there. And there are also disabled student allowances for students who've got long-term health conditions, be they physical, mental health, or even specific learning difficulties. Again, what I would just say is if you think your child, or if any student thinks that they might be eligible for any of this type of support, then they should contact the sixth form team in school and we will help them with that. And then last but not least, how do students actually go about applying for student finance? Well, the link to the student finance website is on the screen there, and that's your starting point to visit the student finance page. And again, all the application for student finance is done online. It's likely that the applications for student finance for September 2021 will open in February 2021, and the deadline is usually the 25th of May of that same year. So for students for next year, it will be the 25th of May 2021 to get your applications in. If you miss that deadline, you will probably still be able to access financial support, but Finance England cannot guarantee to have that support in place by the start of your degree course. So it can make things quite problematic. So it's really important that you meet that 25th of May deadline. Your student finance application can take up to 6 weeks to process, so don't panic if you don't hear from them for a while. It's quite a long admin process that they have to go through. It's important to point out that you can apply for student finance before you've received a confirmed offer from a university, so you don't actually have to tell student finance at this point definitely where you're going to study. You can just start your application without knowing that and add that information later. And the final piece of advice that I would give is you have an option to tick a box as part of your Finance England application that says share details between UCAS and universities. I would definitely recommend ticking that box because it makes the process of things like, for example, getting your tuition fee loan from the government to the right university, it makes that process much more straightforward and much more simple. So I would definitely encourage you to tick that box, but ultimately it is your choice whether or not you wish to share your financial information with UCAS and with universities. The final thing I would like to say before we finish this presentation is just to give you some tips as parents or carers as to how you can support the students with their university application. First of all, I would definitely recommend that you take a look at the Parents and Guardians section of the UCAS website. And again, I've included a link on this PowerPoint slide to take you to that page. Lots of really useful information, and you'll probably find that the majority of your questions can be answered through the information available on that web page. Offer to attend any open days. You might have a different perspective. Again, I realise that at the minute they aren't necessarily open days in the traditional sense, but participate in virtual open days, virtual tours, have that opportunity to look around the universities with the students and just give them your views, give them your thoughts. They might really value your input. Try to avoid booking family holidays at key times like A-level results day. If that can be avoided, that's always really useful. So that's usually around sort of the middle of August. So if you can avoid that, that's really good because it means that if a student does need to go through the clearing process, they're on hand to do that and they're not delayed by being on holiday, for example. Please, please, please make sure that students read everything really carefully that is sent to them. That's probably the biggest issue we face with UCAS is where students haven't quite read something properly. And so then they create a problem by not doing something in the right way or by not meeting the right deadline. If they can read everything carefully, they tend to make sure they get everything right first time, and that makes the process much more straightforward. And again, just support your son or daughter's management of their application. Try to make sure that they're not leaving their application to the last minute. It does really make it more tricky in terms of turning the application around if there's a really tight deadline. If they can get their application sent off to UCAS well in advance of Christmas, they're in a much better position. And as much as anything, it will ease the mental anxiety that comes with a UCAS application. If they can start getting their university offers in sooner, then that often gives them a bit of a confidence boost and helps them to feel a bit better about the process. And finally, I've just included some useful links for you on this final page. Student finance website, the UCAS website, a really good website that's got lots of tips for students called savethestudent.org, and then that's a specific link to the student finance page. Lots of useful information on there. The student room is a good place for students to kind of chat to other students and get their views of what university is like. And then Money Saving Expert, again, can give lots of financial advice if that's what you're looking for. But please do also feel free to get in contact with the sixth form team in school. Our email address is just sixthformstaff@hswv.co.uk. Drop us an email at any time. Ask us any questions you have. If anything needs clarifying from this presentation, please feel free to contact us. That's absolutely fine. I hope that the students have a successful time with their UCAS applications, and I hope that you feel confident after this presentation in supporting them with that. Thank you very much for listening.